Controversial debates, cycling is full of them, especially when it comes to the latest cycling technology. But to honour the diverse set of opinions that exist within our sport, we've decided to round up our top 5 controversial cycling debates. Let's go! When it comes to what type of bike is fastest, the answers have been comprehensively worked out. At the steepest gradients, a lightweight bike is always going to rule. But on descents, on the flat, and even on moderate gradients, an aerodynamic bike will be faster. So, with that all worked out, what exactly is the debate about? You see, it's all a little bit more philosophical than it might sound. If you go for a lightweight bike over an aerodynamic bike, that's saying more about you as a cyclist and your whole attitude towards the sport. It really depends on what you want to get out of it. If hitting the hills the hardest and recovering just in time for the next steep gradient is what you love, then you're obviously going to pick a lightweight bike. But if you like ticking over at a steady power and churning through the miles, then an aerodynamic bike is going to suit you the best. There's also the difference of experience on the two bikes. A lightweight bike is always going to feel the most sprightly, and there's going to be that instant acceleration when you start stomping on the pedals. However, on an aero bike, that acceleration might not be as immediate, but when you get hunkered over and start churning out the power, there's really no feeling like cutting through the air aboard a good aero bike. Of course, there are also differing opinions to the design and the looks of the bike. A deep section wheel ped with a deep section frame has a sort of fast, menacing presence, especially when compared to the slimmed down minimalism of a lightweight bike. Personally, I love a lightweight bike. I like climbing, I feel like it complements my riding style that bit more. But then again, I also love a classic frame design, so don't even get me started on drop seat stays. That's a debate for another day. The fact that tubeless tyres have gained near universal adoption in the mountain biking world does show there is something behind the technology. We swear it hasn't just been invented to make all non-compatible rims and tyres obsolete, honestly. But the fact it hasn't been widely adopted on the road does show that there are some differences between tarmac and trails. It's fair to say that tubeless can be a little bit of trouble. For starters, the stronger bead required for tubeless tyres can make them a bit more difficult to get on the rim. And whilst an inner tube can be inflated with just a hand pump, a tubeless tyre is going to require a compressor or a CO2 valve to get it on the rim. Oh, and don't forget to check and replace your sealant as well, because if you don't turn that, it can become a sticky gloop. Plus, road tyres compared to mountain biking tyres don't need such strong sidewalls, which means we can make them super supple and comfortable without having to run them at crazy low pressures. However, we feel that most riders could benefit from tubeless tyres. Being able to run lower pressures without the risk of punctures will make your riding more comfortable and increase your traction. And finally, tubeless tyres have shown to have the fastest rolling resistance compared to any other setup. But given the fact that tubeless for the off-road riding had such a meteoric rise, and we're still discussing tubeless for the road almost 5 years after it was first introduced, tells me that this debate is going to hang around for a little bit longer still. One bike versus two bikes, another debate which seems to have found an answer in the off-road world, but still rages on the road. Proponents of a one-bike system love to point to its ease of use. Being able to sweep up and down the cassette on the rear really is a simple joy, and not having to worry about shifts on the front derailleur and then compensating on the rear really is enough to put your mind at ease when out on the road. And anyone that's tried it can attest to its beautiful simplicity. There are also a number of marginal gains to be had by going one by. It's a little bit lighter, it's more aerodynamic, and there are less mechanicals to have to contend with once you get rid of that front derailleur. But with that said, 2x still rules the roost when it comes to road riding. The tiny changes between gears are really important when it comes to riding at such varied speed. Anything from 8 km an hour when going up the steepest hill through to 65 or 70 km an hour when descending downhill. It just goes to show that a wide range of ratios are still really important. As more sprockets are added to cassettes, however, 1x does become a greater possibility. Take a 10 to 36 tooth SRAM cassette and pair it with a 42 tooth chainring, and you get a largest gear that is a little bit bigger than a 50 by 12. And you get a smallest gear that is a little easier than a 34 by 28. There is also drivetrain efficiency to take into account. You see, on a 1x system, there's a greater degree of chain flex when you're at the extreme ends of the cassette, when compared to a 2x system when you can compensate with the front ring. On a 1x system, the chain ring is also going to be smaller, which will mean the chain is going to wrap around a larger amount of the sprockets, resulting in losses due to friction. Now, you might say, well, all of these losses are incredibly marginal, and that is true, but if you're chasing every advantage, they'll soon stack up. Electronic gears bring a huge range of valuable benefits when riding on the road. For the home mechanics out there, you're only going to need to fit the electronic cables once instead of having to take them in and out every time you get a stretched gear cable. And even if you use SRAM's ETAP system, there's not even any cables at all. You also get crisper and more precise shifting, and you can put shifters in different places on the bars. So if you're sprinting, you can put them on the drops. If you're on the hoods, you can put them on the tops. However, there are some downsides, or, well, it wouldn't really be a debate. The first is that you can run out of battery, which is a pretty big downside, and it happens to more riders than they care to admit. Secondly, you lose that tactile feeling of shifting with a mechanical group set, which is truly one of the great joys of riding a bicycle. But really, the great debate around this setup comes down to the cost. Upfront, electronic group sets cost nearly twice the price of their mechanical counterparts. So straight away, that's a huge barrier to entry. On top of that, electronic parts cost more to replace, so if you happen to race or you have an accident, you're looking at future costs built up on top of that initial outlay. However, as we've seen recently, electronic technology is beginning to trickle down the group set hierarchies, which could bring costs tumbling down as well. Only time will tell. Rim versus discs. It's the big one. It's the one that has set forums alight and ended friendships ever since 2012, when disc brakes were first introduced on the road with the SRAM Red Hydro R group set. Commonly praised for better braking power, better modulation, the fact you don't wear out your rims when you ride in the rain, the fact that the pads automatically adjust, you've got wider tyre clearances thanks to the removal of the calipers, and the fact they're easier to maintain in integrated systems, hydraulic brakes really are a force to be reckoned with. On the other hand, rim brakes are lighter, I guess? No, that's not the only benefit, of course. There are greater clearances between the pads, which means it's easier to prevent brake rub and to swap wheels, which is what the Pro Peloton love, obviously. And then, of course, there's no issue with the pistons not advancing equally, which can result in some brake rub. Just ask Chris Froome. He's a big fan of rim brakes, apparently. But why does this topic incite such fierce debate? More so than shifting technology and gearing or anything to do with tyres, it's because your choice of disc or rim sets you on an irreversible path with that type of bike for the rest of your riding life. Your frame needs to have specific mounts, you'll need the right spares and upgrades for your type of braking system. There's serious cost and consideration that goes into making such a decision. We're seeing fewer and fewer of the big manufacturers making rim brake bikes, which in turn is making spares and upgrades harder to get hold of and more expensive. However, as long as rim brakes keep winning world tours, and hopefully they'll hang around for a little bit longer still. So there you go, 5 of cycling's fiercest debates laid out for everyone to see. We hope you've enjoyed this video. We've had a lot of fun making it. If you have anything to add and feel like you will, do leave them in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the Cycling Weekly YouTube channel. I'll be back soon with some more great tech content, and I'll see you then.